Jordan Serio, aka Jous, you made top 8 at the Dallas Fort Worth Challenge, winning both a Golden Mickey and an invite to the North American Continentals, which is impressive enough. But you did it with a Rogue List, Amber Emerald, Keeta, Under the Sea combo. Jordan, welcome to the channel. How are you?
Hi, how's it going? Nice to be here. uh, Thanks for having me.
Firstly, who are you, mate? What's your TCG background? What have you been doing in Lorcana so far? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I started playing Lorcana in about March. It's the very start of set three, and I've played a lot of card games over the years. I played Yu-Gi-Oh for about 10 years, up until like 2012, and I was done with that. I got into Magic and played off and on until about COVID, and I just enjoy playing card games.
Nice, that's awesome. Did you play at the other Disney Lorcana challenges? And
Uh,
how did they go?
I played in Atlanta. I played Purple Steel. I ended up like 102 and got a Let It Go out of it. So we did okay.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, it's got to be a pretty nice upgrade to go from a Let It Go to top 8, though.
Oh yeah, we're on a trajectory. We're gonna get win one. We're gonna win one day.
Yeah. Okay, well, for now, let's go straight into DFW specifically, and why in a meta dominated by Bucky, especially as we've seen by its doubling conversion rates in both Bochum and now post Dallas Fort Worth, did you choose Amber Emerald?
Well, I chose Amber Emerald because I don't. One of the things I didn't want to participate in was like the rock paper scissors format that I thought was kind of coming together, where the Emerald
Hmm.
deck was better against the red purple deck. The red purple deck was good against the blue decks. The blue decks were good against the Bucky decks. And I wanted to play something like less polarizing matchups. And I thought that Amber Emerald had very little polarizing matchups and a lot of it was advantaged against most of the field.
Hmm. So how would you say its matchups are into the a big four especially?
So the big four, big five if you count Steel Song, right?
Yeah.
The
Oh yeah, especially with how Steel Song did in DFW. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So against blue steel and red purple, I feel like we are heavily favored. And you gain more points the less your opponent knows about the deck, obviously. Against
Mhm.
red blue, we are unfavored, but I made a pretty I think it was a pretty spot on the meta call that there was going to be a lot of red blue. I didn't play any at all in DFW. Um, Against green steel, it's about 50-50. If they don't have Diablo at all, we are very favored. If they have shift Diablo on 2, we're unfavored. And if they have Diablo on 3, we're still pretty favored. Yeah,
So
lost train of
would you
thought.
say the Emerald Steel matchup's pretty play draw dependent as well then?
Um, it's really Diablo dependent. If they
Yeah.
have Diablo and can establish an early draw engine, then we have to make plays. Of course, we have concessions. We have like a tiered plan against Diablo where you have the Sir Hiss to check it. You have the
Yeah.
Muses to bounce it and gain tempo, where they have to replay it. They can't sing songs in that time, and they're only playing Diablo. And if you have a draw engine out, then you can maintain um, card parity, even though they keep on replaying Diablo, triggering the Bucky.
So okay, so pretty Diablo dependent. Red purple, you felt sorry unfavored. I think you said.
I know,
Uh,
red purple, very favored.
oh, red purple very favored. Red blue unfavored, but you predicted that it would be a low representation, maybe especially from seeing how it did in Bochum. What about blue steel, sapphire steel?
Blue Steel, I feel like, is also very favored. Just the way the deck's currently constructed, it doesn't line up well with what we're trying to do. Um, Usually they're playing to the board. Um, and playing a two drop, I look at it as them sudden chilling themselves. uh,
Hmm.
Especially if they play a Fishbone Quill, I look at that as they have you forgotten me themselves. And it just helps us to attack their hand. If they are playing two drops, playing three drop Mickey, we're usually able to discard their hand by like at least turn five. Um, and in that situation, then you're just playing against their board, which is like a Smeeze or Argus, Mickey, perhaps a Beast, Tinkerbell, and I like our chances against that board setup specifically. Eventually, we're able to. They also play into Under the Sea, the way that they play the deck, and I just find that the best chances they have is top decking, uh, grab your swords into whole new world type plays. And if you're able to kind
Yeah.
of deal with their board efficiently, they're not able to kind of execute their game plan.
And would you say that changes from the, I mean, three major variations we have of blue steel being one jump wheel, Mickey wheel, and no wheel?
So with the one jump, that's kind of the preferred one to play against because you're able to snipe it a lot of times with Ursula and Bare Necessities. The Mickey, I I like them playing the Mickey because it, like I said, it's like another card out their hand. I feel like most of their chances of winning, in my experience, is to try to play into the fact that they have powerful top decks such as Whole New World and Grab Your Swords. Um,
Yeah.
Against the no wheel version, I haven't had a lot of testing against the no wheel version, but in theory, I feel like it's more vulnerable uh, to not being able to come back because of how efficiently we can discard their hand.
Yeah, I mean, so would you say, let's take no wheel version as an example, because I found in my testing that no wheel was a lot more resilient to green yellow's game plan. The sort of game plan I'd be looking at would be a popsicle on one, maybe even skip a 2-drop on two, at most play a 5 of cannons to remove a shifted Diablo, and then on turn 3, Mickey, turn 4, Haram plus another popsicle. So that way you maintain hand size and parity a lot better until you can reach those removal targets like Grab Your Sword, like Tink, like Simba.
So, kind of an idea that you want to play against. Uh, it's mostly kind of an idea that we use against blue red to have chances is to keep the Hiram off the board, so to keep them off balance, so where they have to choose to either kind of develop their board or replay the Hiram. And I feel like that line of
Mm.
play ends up being kind of free for us because it happens with the muses or Mother Knows Best. And while that's happening, we can also keep attacking their hand with like you have forgotten me's, more sudden chills, more bare necessities, and that pattern kind of doesn't ease up. And eventually, if we keep that up, they're going to have to just hard cast a whole new world because we're never going to let them try to land a singer for it. Or you were talking
Yeah.
about no wheel, but
Yeah, no, slightly different for wheel because I think there's a lot less targets with bare
yeah, yeah.
necessities. Is the main reason I think it's more resilient. Yeah, okay, but so the idea is you keep bouncing the Haram so that you can keep pressuring the board and keep pressuring the hand with your. But so for that, also while you're bouncing the Haram, you're going to need to have your draw engine set up so that you find ways for these answers and to keep discarding the hand, right? So with the Prince John on board, that's how you're looking to refill your hand. Because specifically, I've noticed that you're not running a Look at This Family, which was I thought was a pretty good synergy at the start of a set, since we're already setting up Singer Ariel. Did you test that card a lot? How did you find it?
I felt like I I theorized about it, and it doesn't it's not able to get off as much as like you would want it to because of
Mm.
specifically against green steel. They're able to kind of like clear your board from the singers. Red purple has like brawls to keep you off of aerials. I just felt like it was too hard to set up. I tried to actually be our guest as a way to kind of hedge about finding Prince John on turn two because we have Sir Hiss is a great singer because he's not able to be challenged back.
Yeah.
And Beer Guest was close. I was actually kind of close to cutting some amount of paints for some amount of Beer Guest, but I didn't go that way.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess overall the idea with keeping the paints is you still, the more paints you have, the more synergies you have with the muses, right? In order to lower strength, bounce the cards back.
So the paints are a big concession to green steel, and also have overlap against blue steel, where you're trying to, yeah, of course, lower your opponent's beast, Jafar, Robin Hood, to a range where you can bounce them or get them in range of Under the Sea. And
Mm.
really, that's the biggest utility for Paint is being able to pretty cleanly answer boarded Robin Hoods and Beast in both blue steel and green steel matchups.
Mm. Whereas free attack, well, free attack is within the one attack range, but I suppose at four attack, you're looking at cards that are a bit out of range, which was a big reason I thought green yellow maybe wouldn't have a place in the meta, is because that's already a threshold everyone's trying to get above because of Medusa, because of, Ice Cube and Sisu interactions. Uh, like, how have you found Under the Sea as a card to hit major targets when everyone's trying to be above this free attack, four attack threshold?
So one of the big um, eureka moments for me was figuring out that you kind of want to play to Under the Sea more than you want to attack your opponent's hands, which maybe, if you look at the list, is kind of intuitive. Where you see the inherent
Mm.
synergy of Prince John and You Have Forgotten Me, and you're like, oh, okay, Prince John, You Have Forgotten Me, +3, that's great. But you fall behind a lot on board that way, and a lot
Yeah.
of the decks that you're playing against, their main way to have counterplay against you is to have a bigger board than you and just kind of quest out while you have a bunch of weenies on the board and can't really challenge back. So a lot of the times I'm looking to, instead of You Have Forgotten Me on turn 4, I'm looking to play it on maybe turn 5, um, where I go 2 drop, 3 drop, 3 drop slash muses. And then after that, you get to a point on turn 5 where most decks are very vulnerable to Akita Under the Sea line. And
Mm.
that's kind of how you're setting up the Under the Sea plays. Against like red purple, for instance, they are playing their best line against you is Flynn, Sisu, maybe Goat, maybe Rabbit, where they're trying to just have a bigger board than you. And if you get to turn 5, you're able a lot of the time to set up a good Under the Sea with the key to help.
Main line, you have forgotten me. You're avoiding playing it on 4. You want that aerial muses, red purple against you. I mean, one of red purple's interaction to prevent your under the sea play is to, I assume, just brawl your aerial, right? Until they can get to that 6 ink where they can more efficiently deal with your board and keep their draw engine going with the rabbits and recycling it with bounces.
Yeah, so like kind of one of the play lines that Red Purple's trying to go for is to keep us off of being able to see Under the Sea, but we have very good warded singers when in the terms of Prince John and Muses. So a lot of the times you want to go.
Mm.
Muses is the card I find swings the red purple matchup if they're playing correctly with Flynn Sisu, because it's able to keep the Flynn off the board pretty much guaranteed. And then the Sisu is not really that much of a problem. And if they're not playing um, to a bigger board than you, then you have no problem kind of just under the seeing all their rabbits and maleficents and Flynn's away. So they have to try to go bigger than you, and in which case you kind of in which case you're able to set up the under the sea play. Um, or Cricky. Cricky's a big thing because they don't really respect it.
Yeah. So you can use your small drops to trade into the larger characters with the Cricky, right? Or with the +3 attack. Also
Yeah,
helps with castles.
yeah. And in that way, you're kind of playing 6 board wipes. You're playing the Crickies, which turn your Diablo 1s, your Sir Hisses, your Ursulas into removal. So you get to a point on turn 5 where it's like, okay, well, do I play around the Cricky? Do I play around the you Under the Sea? Do I play around the You Have Forgotten Me? It kind of puts your opponents in a bind that way.
Okay, so how do you think so traditional red purple list, right? Maybe are a bit more vulnerable to this game plan. What do you think of the first place winners list, Ed, who runs a lot more card draw to stay on parity and in order to try and reach that be prepared, or the Sisu, which is the game plan they use for green steel, which I assume is a game plan that works decently for yellow green too. Because Ed's list specifically is running 8/1 drops, all of them cycle, so they replace, in theory, are replacing themselves every time. And then the Sisu actually gets around, all of your warded characters and is quite an effective counter card.
Yeah, so against Red Purple, I don't know how effective Sisu is against us, because we are pretty consistently able to cut off their hand, which means we're cutting off their ink by like turn 6 or 7. If they're
Mm.
playing to the board with, or they're playing to draw cards and not specifically like trying to be bigger than us on the board, they're very vulnerable to Under the Sea because the rabbits, the Maleficents, and Flins, they all get wiped by them. Um, so it's an idea to play the Sisu, but if they are trying to be passive against us, we are going to just amass a amount of cards in our hands that we can come over top the Sisu after they wipe our board. You have to be wary of it, of course, but I don't see if that's very effective actually against us. It
Mm.
is a good idea to be aware that they can shift the Sisu on turn 6. That can really get us if we're not prepared for that. But if you are kind of prepared and that's in the back of your mind, you can kind of play around that idea. And if they go
Yeah, so
for a
I
Sisu on
imagine one
6,
thing that would be quite hard is normally your way to get rid of a small Sisu to prevent them from shifting, like in Ed's list, would be to bounce it. But with the nature of Sisu, if you're building hand size and you have it, you'd probably be giving it too much attack for you to be able to bounce it.
yeah. So some of the ways that we deal with the Sisu on 3 are the Cricky if they don't respect it, which most of them I haven't played against the red purple that actually respected the Cricky, and they usually lose the Sisu to the Cricky pumping like an Ursula. Um,
Hmm.
but one of the reasons that I'm playing Mother Knows Best in the list, excuse me, um, one of the reasons I'm playing Mother Knows Best in the list is specifically for Sisu on 3 because I was having a little bit of problems with it. Um, in my top 8 match
Yeah.
versus Ed, I don't see like a Mother Knows Best or a clean way to answer it, so I have to kind of crash my Prince John and a Sir Hiss into it, which is obviously not the optimal way you want to deal with it. Um, but we have options against it,
Yeah.
and we just played those options.
Okay, so let's talk little bit about card choices you didn't make more. Like we talked about, look at this family. One card choice I made early on in the set with the deck was running Merfolk and Flynn Rider so that you could add a little bit of speed to the deck. Why did you choose to opt for not going down this route?
So when I first put the deck together, I had a thought of Merfolk and Flynn, but the more I played the deck, the more I realized it's just a control deck, and you really don't even want one drops in most situations. Kind of taking inspiration by the way that Red Purple has kind of adapted to the meta by dropping one drops. Um, Against most of the decks, your one drops don't do much. Like you're not really trying to quest quest and outquest people. You're really trying to uh, discard your opponent's entire hand and have their board completely clear. A lot of your win states, you're questing with a bunch of weenies against your opponent that has nothing. Um, so in that case, the Flins and the Merfolks don't do a lot, and they kind of
Mm.
are a hindrance to your main idea of just being a control deck with multiple board wipes and able to just sit back. And if your opponent is passively not playing the game, you're going to just eventually you have inevitability to win based on
Yeah.
your card draw and your card advantage engines.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely a big fan of that idea. I think you don't want to split your deck between too many game plans, especially if they're counter to each other. Um, yeah, it's sort of similar to Emerald Steel in the sense that they don't run a lot of high lore characters. They're just hoping to win out the game off of the post like hand burn stage of the game. So unless except into red blue maybe is the only deck that's going to be able to top deck something that will significantly change the state of the game. And I guess that's the reason why you say red blue is one of the decks that maybe you're less good into because they have such strong top decks, I assume, and really efficient removal answers for your board.
Yeah, so red blue specifically is unique in the way that their answers are very efficient to our
Mm.
deck. Like they play the some number of Sisu and like 4 Be Prepared. And all those are clean answers, unlike Blue Steel, which has Grab Your Swords and Tinkerbell, which the Grab Your Swords is good against about half the characters we play, but it doesn't answer Muses,
Yeah.
it doesn't answer Ariel, it doesn't answer Cricky, it doesn't answer an onboard Kita. And Tinkerbell doesn't actually clear anything that we play, except for Sir Hiss. But the the Sisu and the Be Prepareds are very clean answers, and kind of the difference in red purple playing Sisu and blue red playing Sisu is that if blue red has lines where they can keep their hand insulated enough, where they can keep drawing cards with How Far I Go, with
Hmm.
Grammatala, with Hiram, and kind of keep their hand up enough that we can't discard the whole thing by the time that they can set up 6 or 7 ink. And if they get 6 or 7 ink, they're right there to get to their board wipes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, kind of similar to how their game plan is and their matchups are into Emerald Steel. So specifically, I mean, something interesting to talk about is that the idea of breaking the rock paper scissors matchups that you mentioned earlier. Green yellow obviously has some similar matchups to Emerald Steel, as we've noticed and been talking about, because it shares the Emerald, Diablo, and some forms of the discard package. But what about it in green yellow do you think makes it have a better matchup spread than Emerald Steel, in your opinion?
It's really the fact that we're kind of attacking in a different way than Emerald Steel is. They're discard one a turn, maybe two if they have sudden chill. We're discarding in bunches. A lot of the time, we're turn five where you've forgotten me into plus a sudden chill. And decks aren't really prepared to discard multiple cards at a time. And you can really catch someone trying to set up their uninkable ladies in chairs, their uninkable um, be prepared and stuff like that. And they have to kind of make a decision where do they want to keep ink to keep playing the game, or do they have to discard these powerful cards that they're trying to set up? Um, and that way we have chances. We have better chances, I feel, against blue red than Emerald Steel does. I played a fair amount of Emerald Steel at the start of the format, and I was winning with the deck, but I felt like the blue steel or the blue red matchup was so it felt like I was behind most of the time. Blue Steel also felt
Yeah.
that way, but in a way that this deck specifically is lines up very good against Blue Steel, and I feel like that kind of breaks um, the rock paper scissors where we're good against the red purple, we're
Hmm.
good against Blue Steel. And I feel like the Blue Steel is the best blue deck at the moment, um, and we're also pretty 50-50 against Emerald Steel.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, because one of the main counterpoints I would say to this deck is that people reckon the non Emerald Steel Emerald decks like green purple and like green yellow have a pretty unfavorable matchup into Emerald Steel, but it is interesting for you to say that it feels quite 50-50 based on whether or not they get the Diablo. And I suppose if most of the time, I think most Emerald Steel players are hardlining for the Bucky, but if they learned the matchup a bit better and knew that Diablo was the card to be mulliganing for in this matchup specifically, and Bucky wasn't as relevant, do you think that could end up tipping the scales?
It's a possibility. I think that that is more online. What they should be mulliganing for against us is they should be going for Diablo. But like I said, we're really afraid of the shift Diablo on two because of the way it just enables them to sing the songs against us and kind of get us off
Hmm.
balance. But if they have just a naked Diablo on turn three, we're able to come on turn four. We're able to sing with our singer,
No worries.
our three drop on turn four, maybe a Mother Knows Best. Um, our check is the Sir Hiss, and they can't remove if they play a naked Diablo, they can't remove the Sir Hiss with singing through the Diablo, obviously. And Diablo's
Yeah.
kind of able to check them right there. So if they play naked Diablo and then they have to wait till their turn four to even deal with our Sir Hiss, we have other options like Muses on turn four, and we're able to keep the Diablo off balance.
No worries. So I guess, yeah, a big benefit to Muses is that if you already have a singer set up on turn three, you put the Muses down on turn four, you can immediately get value out of singing a song and then triggering the Muses effect.
Yes,
So it's
that's
it's quite proactive. Yeah.
that's kind of the general game plan to keep. If we can keep the Diablo off the board, they're going to keep trying to reland it, or they're going to try to shift to not playing the Diablo and maybe shift to playing like a Jafar, which doesn't get bounced by Muses. Maybe they get to turn five, they play Beast. Um, But the trick is we also have paint, which also is a clean bounce to the beast, to the Jafar, to the Robin Hood that they might be trying to set up outside the Diablo.
So, I mean, one thing I like to talk about is we've already gone over the value of it, but how much does the math of You Have Forgotten Me really add into this deck in combination with a Sudden Chill? Because traditionally, this color combo and You Have Forgotten Me as a card has been quite overlooked for being a bit slow and a bit clunky, coming at 4 ink and not being singable.
Yeah, I feel like You Have Forgotten Me is kind of the nail in the coffin for a lot of decks. Because just the way
Mm.
that matches play out, um, on turn 5, You Have Forgotten Me with the Sudden Chill is almost guaranteed to snipe all non-blue decks hand on that turn, and that way you kind of put them in a situation where they have to top deck really well to uh, come out of that, and you already have cards in hand, you have card advantage, you have decent characters on board already. They are stuck with the characters that they have, and you are putting them in kind of a box where they have to top deck out of it. And
Yeah.
that way, You Have Forgotten Me is very strong in this deck specifically, especially with the interactions with Prince John. Uh, Even if you don't have Prince John and you're just using Diablo, like uh, You Forgot, this deck wouldn't operate. I don't think without You Have Forgotten Me.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it seems to, along with Sudden Chill, it seems to add on to that, extra burst of discard to get them to that top deck state. The Bucky deck without singing double Sudden Chill with Ursula can't seem to reach as efficiently.
Yeah, definitely. This is just a. We just have so much discard that decks are not prepared. Maybe if people adjust their play patterns a little bit, uh, there's different chances. But in my testing, in my theorizing, most decks don't have, in their current conception, enough ways to kind of deal with the way that we're attacking them.
Yeah. I mean, so do you think if, say, a new player, or not even a new player, a player of a different deck, never touched Amber Emerald, maybe not even touched a discard deck, were to pick up this deck because you say it has really good matchups into, say, Bologna this weekend, do you think they'd be able to do well, or is there just quite a lot of learning needed and a skill expression within a deck that's quite rogue and has so many moving parts?
So one of what I'll say to that is that this is like very much a control deck. You need to know other decks' lines of play. You can't get surprised by a turn 5 Maui, for instance. You can't get surprised by a Fox. You need to be aware of what all the other decks are kind of trying to do, so that way you can properly prep against it. Because this deck, um, a lot of the games you'll have like explosive. Well, in about 4/5 of your games, you'll have, or in about 1 in 4 of your games, you'll have like a very explosive hand where it looks like you're unbeatable, where you'll
That's
go
a very
shifty
different
out.
percentage. We went from 80% to
Yeah, yeah.
20%.
I was trying to do the math in my head. In
Yeah.
about 1 in 4, in about 1 in 4 games, you'll have the shift Diablo line. You'll have the bare necessities. You'll have Prince John. You'll just discarding. You'll have You Forgot Me on 4, and you're just blowing decks out the water. But a lot of games, you're not gonna have that. You're gonna have your cards, and they have a lot of synergy. This is a very synergistic deck, and you kind of need to know the best way to maximize them. This deck takes a lot of like patience. You don't want to kind of rush the You Forgot Me on turn
Hmm.
4. That's a big trap. You need to um, maximize all your triggers. You can't miss Muse's triggers. You have to be aware that you can bounce your Ariel. You got to be aware that you can bounce your Ursula. Replay them. You got to be aware that you sometimes want to um, bounce one of your, say, Prince John after you quested with it. Bounce it, replay it, so they can't challenge it. Um, there's a lot of maximizing triggers, and so this deck, it requires you to sequence properly. It requires you to maximize your triggers, and it requires you to have some patience and a kind of a lot of knowledge of the metagame. So in that way, I would suggest if you want to play this deck, you should have a vast knowledge of the metagame. You should be able to sequence properly. You should be able to maximize all your triggers. If you feel you're comfortable doing
Hmm.
that, I suggest this deck as a great counter pick for the meta going into Bologna. I believe it's set up very well. I rounded that out
I mean,
okay.
I would probably actually be very keen in playing this deck. My main gate is I don't own 4 Diablos, and they're a very expensive card.
Yeah, of course.
So it's yeah, it's unfortunate, but you know, we kind of have more of those restrictions these days, especially since we're closing of Pixelborn, the online client. You can't really try before you buy. So in my case, for example, where I don't have an expensive collection, it's a lot harder to make these rogue choices. But for you, well, you've been testing green yellow since the start of the set, so you invested quite early into this ink combination.
Actually, I have two very good friends, and they have pretty good collections, and I still don't really own the whole deck. They kind of let me borrow most of the
Hey,
cards.
that's me. Every tournament I'm using. This is actually Bologna. Bologna is the first time I'm gonna own my whole deck. Every other tournament I've been to, I've borrowed at least half of it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, I definitely relate. Shout out to Woody and Jared for supplying me with cards.
And then now you got that Mickey money. You can start owning your own deck.
Yeah, you know, we're working on actually. Oh man, I actually just picked up 2 enchanted Diablos. So
Woo! You're looking
yeah,
to bling out your top 8 list.
I like to maybe eventually, I don't know, like frame it or something. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
you gonna max rarity your list out? All cold foils and enchanted.
we're gonna try. We're gonna try.
What's that? Four enchanted Diablos, 4 enchanted Ketas, and 4 enchanted under. We don't talk about Bruno.
Yeah.
That's a pretty shiny deck.
I don't actually like the enchanted. We don't talk about Bruno, so we're gonna skip that one. I do like the regular foil. We don't talk about Bruno, so but I do like the enchanted Ketas though. They are
Okay.
crisp.
I love the enchanted art of Bruno. I actually think that's crazy. I think the enchanted looks so good.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of
All
the
right.
Bruno, but um,
As a
a
card or
point
as the
that
art?
oh, the art, of course. The card is one of the best cards in the deck.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but the card seems nuts, especially with the Muses synergy, because you sort of get double removal, right? You can hit a larger target and then trigger the song to bounce something smaller.
Yeah, so some where this deck could be easily misplayed is sometimes you'll end up on a board with like Prince John, Muses, Ariel. You'll sing the Bruno with the Ariel. You will they'll you'll roll your dice, discard their card. You'll trigger the Prince John, draw a card. Maybe you miss the Muses trigger, or maybe miss the Prince John trigger. Maybe you want to bounce your Ariel that you just sang with. Maybe you want to bounce one of their smaller characters. Um, that is an example of like just there's a lot of moving parts of this deck, and you just kind of have to be aware
Hmm.
of everything moving. You have to be able to see all the things that are happening, which is kind of a you have to learn. You have to learn it.
Bouncing your own aerial is kind of an insane play line I didn't even think about until just that second. So I guess the idea is if you really wanted to dig for more songs, or you didn't want to leave Ariel vulnerable to the challenge.
Yeah, it's bouncing the aerial is like one of the tertiary card advantage engines, obviously behind Prince John, behind Diablo. A lot of the times when you see under the scene with Ariel, you want to bounce her, so you can replay her the next turn, or you can replay her that
Yeah.
same turn because the under the sea is free. Um,
Hmm.
and you do have to kind of make a concession. Like, do you want to bounce her and not have a singer for Bruno sometimes, or sometimes you have to choose that you're okay with not having a singer for Bruno.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's head into the end section of this interview here. So I think unless there's something specific you want to talk about, a card choice or a tech choice you've made.
One of the I don't know if you know. Most people didn't realize. Someone topped Chicago with like the skeleton of this list. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about how the kind of evolved from there, but
I mean, if you want to talk, probably not going to put it up for visual, but if you want to talk about what changed and where your philosophy of the deck changed to bring it to the point where you topped 8, go for it.
So I'd like to give a shout out to Joseph Quigley, who topped Chicago. I think he got top 32 with the skeleton of this
Yeah,
version. And
I remember. Yeah, we covered the list.
yeah, okay. He topped and he really made the skeleton of this deck, and kind of the deck wouldn't be where it is. I would never have picked it up actually if it wasn't for him. Um, and some of the changes from that are the Sir Hiss instead of the Flynn Riders, which the Sir Hiss
Mm.
is very important in a lot of matchups. Uh, it checks Diablo. It doesn't. It checks Flynn, the 2-drop Flynn. It is able to trade into most of Ruby Amethyst's plays before turn 5. It it's a free singer. It does a lot of work in this deck that it's kind of you don't see when you look at it. It's 3-1 evasive, but he really does a lot of powerful things in the deck. Um,
Mm.
Going to Mother Knows Best, I like I like being able to freely bounce, keep your opponents off tempo, and also being able to develop your board. Uh, Being able to attack their hand with You Have Forgotten Me is a big play. Um, that is a little change from that deck list. Anything else that changed really?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Sir Hiss especially, it's easy to be attracted to the idea of Flynn Rider. You know, at Quest for 2 applies a lot of early pressure, getting you closer to your goal of 20, but moving more in the essence of a control deck and having more more less proactive answers to Diablo. So has quite a reactive answer to Diablo, but still a threat nonetheless that needs to be checked. Seems pretty strong, especially as you say, you have so many early songs you want to be singing. You have Mother's Knows Best, Sudden Chill, Bare Necessities, but synergizes really well with an evasive. But sitting on a board in a meta where there aren't many evasives, the only other deck I know running early evasives are sometimes Pegasus and green purple, or for a similar reason, the 3/1 red Pegasus in red blue.
Yeah. He's a their Sir Hiss is not as good as ours. Ours can sing Sudden Chill and
Yeah.
Bare Necessities.
Very true, very true. Maybe the same stat line, but in a different ink, is in a lot different context.
Oh yeah,
Okay, well
definitely.
let's head into the final section here. We're going to be talking a bit more, higher level abstract stuff. First thing I want to talk about was, do you think the surprise factor of your deck with Under the Sea was a major advantage in the new game format with closed deck lists? And if it was, do you think it changed that much when you went into open deck lists for day 2 and top?
So I believe in the deck wholeheartedly. I don't think this is like a surprise deck or a kind of a
Not seeing surprise as like a negative, but like, do you even knowing that
no.
if you think it stands on its own legs, do you think it gave an advantage?
Oh yeah, I just want to point out to like maybe like people listening that it's not like a gimmick deck. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, no, I get what you mean. Yeah.
so like I'll go back into that. So I I don't think this deck is a surprise deck or like a gimmick deck. But the surprise factor definitely helps, especially if people don't have practice playing around Under the Sea. I caught a lot of blue steel players and a lot of red purple players and even green steel players just playing into what I thought an obvious Under the Sea play. Um, you also get a lot of equity by being able to disguise yourself sometimes as an Emerald Steel deck on turn 1.
Hmm.
You can ink Diablo, specifically ink Diablo, ink Sudden Chill, ink Ursula, ink, we don't talk about
Think
Bruno.
anything green that's typically in it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I was able to have 2 red purple players ink their Flynn on turn 2. By doing that specifically, and then not playing any card on turn 2, which is great for us. um,
Right. That is a major. So normally when you're hiding your ink combo, there's very limited effect you can have on the game. But considering how polarizing how you play into Emerald Steel is by disguising yourself as an Emerald Steel deck and only inking green cards, you actually can generate quite an advantage.
oh yeah, it definitely comes up. It's definitely something you should be thinking about as you're piloting the deck. Is how um, instead of inking my Paint the Roses red against the red purple player, I'm going to ink my Bruno. I'm going to ink maybe my turn 2 Ursula instead of Paint the Roses red.
Yeah. I mean, Unless you're like me, about 3 times in the Swiss Bockham, I was just clumsy while shuffling going into game one, and you just, accidentally reveal your deck there,
Oh
card
no.
flips over.
Oh no, that's not it.
It's like, oops, you found me out. I even sleeved up green sleeves because I was like, maybe they'll think I'm on Emerald Steel.
It's worth a shot.
Yeah.
um,
All right. Yeah. Is that? Yeah. So I get what you mean. So it's not a surprise deck, but do you think once your opponents did know what deck you're on in Top Cut, obviously, that information advantage, it sort of equalizes, right? But they're more able to find you out when you're a rogue list. However, they still don't really know necessarily the play lines, right? Because with a rogue deck, you're the only one that has tons and tons and tons of experience in the matchup. But if you're a red-purple player, it's very unlikely you've had experience into the green-yellow matchup unless you were in your testing group, right?
oh yeah, definitely. I found that a lot of people are going into like red purple specifically. They want to play against you like they play against Bucky decks, where they'll play
Mm.
no 2-drop, no 1-drop. They'll play Maleficent, Rabbit, another Rabbit, and that obviously leads right into Under the Sea without even any setup from Kita. Um, and I feel like we're very advantaged there. And it took me a while to actually figure out that their best play against us is Flint Sisu and trying to just.
Does Under the Sea get around the on-draw effect, sorry? From on Banish on Rabbit,
Oh
or are
no
they
no
still
they
triggering
they
that?
draw, but like they're just really behind
Yeah.
on board, and it's hard for them to make that
Mm.
up. Especially we're still able to attack their hand. We're able to target target their um, we're able to target their be prepareds with 8 targeted discards between the Ursula, between the bare necessities, being able to bounce the Ursula, replaying the Ursula. Um, it's not so simple for them just to get to turn 7 and play be prepared. We make it as difficult as possible for them to do that.
I just want to say, you were every few tidbits of information, you're making me realize how nuts the Muses is. You can pounce your own Ursula and replay the Ursula to
Comes up.
target another song. That is crazy.
They have. There's another thing that comes up. It doesn't come up often, but when it does come up, it's the most important thing to know is that when you play Kita, she reduces herself to 0. So there's lines where you
Mm.
bounce the Kita with the muses and quest out, and they can't crack back at you because you have like kind of pseudo evasive. And the next turn you replay the Kita, you rebounce the Kita, and you kind of can get this loop where they actually can't deal with your board, and you're able to kind of quest out that way.
That is very, very interesting. Yeah, so you're essentially just nullifying any chance of challenging unless we have a rush character.
Yeah, yeah, and especially it comes up against like Green Steel, it can come up against Amber Steel, where they have like Robin Hood, and they're like, oh, Robin Hood, but the Robin Hood can't actually kill your characters. You can't banish your characters, um, or like Beast can't deal with your characters even, um, and then they expose the Beast so you can attack it, and then they don't draw off of it anymore. These are kind of
Mm.
lines that don't come up often, but they're good to know when they do, obviously.
Yeah. Okay, and I think the final topic, unless you have anything else you want to bring up, post Bucky nerf, especially for those still playing Set 4 in Toronto, you think this deck is well positioned to dominate with the full and Emerald Steel within the meta?
I think the deck is very well positioned after Bucky's gone. I think Red Purple is going to push out Blue Red still. I think that we have a good matchup against Amber Steel, especially if they're not on Queens, because of our
Mm.
targeted discard. I think Amber Steel is going to be a big part of the meta because of its matchup against Red Purple. Against Blue Steel, like I said, I think we have a good matchup. And against road decks like Purple Steel, Green Purple, um, I don't I don't foresee us having too much issues with those. It's definitely something to test because those decks kind of aren't really part of the meta because of Bucky, and we'll kind of see how that develops, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting to think about, right? Because metas are like an ecosystem, and Emerald Steel right now, Bucky is the apex predator. I mean, it's funny to have a squirrel be the apex predator of an ecosystem, but here we are. And once, all those changes happen, like it kind of disrupts the rock, paper, scissors balance we've had. I think you're very right in saying that red purple's going to push to the top. And that means that decks that are good against red purple will probably also gain an advantage. I think that's green purple, that is amber steel, and that maybe is painful for decks like sapphire steel and red blue, which were initially relying on their being able to counteract Bucky so effectively to exist in the meta.
Oh yeah. I think I'm interested to see the shake up in Toronto. I might be going. Probably going.
Hmm.
So it's gonna be interesting to see how everything
Hopefully,
shakes out.
back to back Mickeys.
That's the dream. Hopefully a trophy. I really want a trophy. That's what I want.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see how the meta develops. I'm interested to see what all Emerald Steel has held down, but I'm kind of doubtful if people are even going to switch off the decks that have been playing for 3 months.
Hmm.
So I'm interested to see how it develops. Yeah.
I'm interested to see if a lot of Emerald Steel players just move to your deck because they still want the discard capability.
The discard capabilities are there. I suggest you, if you want to, you definitely need to practice though. Sequencing is very important in this deck. I'm interested to see actually if what Green Steel modifies into. Does it go to like more of like a set 3 build? Is that even good? I don't know. I'm excited to kind
I
of
feel
see.
like some level of Prince John has to be around, right? Because that just is Emerald's card draw primarily, without along with Diablo.
Yeah, the Merfolk Flynn Prince John line is actually obviously like inherently like very powerful. It's hard to deal with those characters questing for a bunch and the fact that you have to discard your opponent draws. I think and then trying to see where Diablo also fits in that deck as well. Yeah, I'm not sure to go from there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot to think about. I think it's hard to predict. I wish I had more time and more cards to pick up this deck. I think it's very much my play style. I like the tempo, with along with aspect. I think it's a really good choice, and I think you made a really great meta read to bring it to that tournament. I mean, especially considering how you really only knew through your own testing that the matchup was more 50-50 with Emerald Steel. I was of the mindset, just in theory, that it would be a lot more favored in Emerald Steel's favor. So that's really interesting to hear about too.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think to some degree that the reason you feel the matchup is favored, because we all get this bias, right? The reason that you might feel the matchup is favored is because you've become such a master of the deck specifically, and you know the play lines very intricately.
That definitely helps. I don't think you really have to be able to see all the ways that you have to interact with Emerald Steel. Like on surface, it's like okay, well they landed Diablo, we don't actually have any hard removal for it. How do we deal with it? We deal with it by a bunch of preventative measures, like
Mm,
surface checking it, having the muses, not letting it um, dry. That's the term. Not letting it dry so it can
yeah.
sing songs and really become a very big problem for you. Um, yeah, so running it back, the definitely having a lot of theorizing and having a lot of playtesting definitely helps against Emerald Steel, and them not having a lot of playtesting against your play lines and kind of being unsure of where exactly you're going definitely helps. Perhaps the matchup is less favored um, in a full in a world where we have Pixelborn and everyone can test against it, but in a world where we
Mm.
don't have Pixelborn and you can't test 100 games against the deck, um, you have a significant you have in a world where you don't have Pixelborn, I feel like you have a big knowledge advantage against Emerald Steel.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to the topic of players who have good testing groups, who have access to cards, they can test all these different decks. They now have a much bigger advantage than they used to with Pixelborn, where knowledge and information was a lot more equalized. Because, I mean, I can speak for myself, but a lot of the time, the only time I'm getting testing into decks like these is really doing these interviews and talking to players about it, because without that, I don't know, my locals, not that big. without online play and webcam play, like I wouldn't be able to get the testing I needed to do well in tournament.
I'll say that one of the selling points for this deck for me was I came on it about 3 days before Pixelborn shut down, and when I got on it, I was losing, but when I was playing the deck, I was like, okay, well, there's some play here. I am messing up, and so I
Yeah.
was able to jam out like 30 to 40 games in like those 3 days, and I'm like, there's stuff in here. So I ended up developing that over like the course of like the past like the following month, and one of the things that kept me on the deck was that I know what the deck is. My opponents have no idea what the deck is. Most people think that Lemon Lime is like a joke color because of
Yeah.
kind of early builds. We're playing like Ursula on 3, which doesn't really do much. They were playing
Hey,
a lot of one
my
drops.
build never played Ursula on free. I thought the Singer Ursula was bad from the start.
You got it. um, Playing one drops, and another big trap in the deck is that you don't want one drops. You don't want. Um,
Mm,
you're not trying to quest. You're really playing it as a control deck straight up, and other players not being able to see the deck and not being able to get reps against me playing on Pixelborn or other players playing on Pixelborn. I know Zach Bivens was on a similar list. Um, like that definitely helped, and that was definitely part of my thought process picking the deck. Is that it's a road deck that no one's gonna have experience against, and I can capitalize on that.
mm. Yeah, I wish we had this interview like a week ago. I might have had time to get reps in on the deck and try and borrow the cards.
I can help you jam some games out if you want, but yeah. Um,
I don't think I'm leaving in 2 days. I
oh,
don't think I'm.
oh,
That's
yeah,
probably too soon
yeah,
to
it's
try and jam a
Thursday.
new deck.
Yeah, I've helped some friends pick it up and win set championships in a couple of days, but yeah, going to the challenge, you want to play what you're familiar with. I don't recommend switching off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that.
I know. If I was playing in Toronto though, I would absolutely be putting in reps for this list. I think it's probably one of the favorites to do very well in Toronto.
Yeah, I have some ideas to adapt to a post Bucky meta. Uh,
Mm.
that I think are gonna cook a little bit. So we're gonna go into Toronto, probably on something similar to this. We will see though. I have some ideas.
All right. Well, I'm excited to see that, and I think that about wraps it up for this interview. Unless there's anything else you'd like to say, please do shout yourself out. Where can we see more of you? And hopefully we'll see you in more Top Cut lists too.
Thank you. You can follow me on Twitter. At the moment, I made one after the challenge. I haven't really posted much yet, but I plan on posting more.
As every good player does, you capitalize on the post Top Cut, build a Twitter, get the social media followers, build the clout.
We're trying. If anyone wants to follow
Yeah.
me, you can follow me at Jordan Serio. You can message me on Discord if you have any questions about the deck. I like helping people trying to figure it out. I'm hoping to see more of it. I think it's kind of cool that it's finally getting its limelight. Lemon Lime's getting the limelight.
The limelight. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming on. I've really appreciated being able to talk to you. It's always super fun to get into, the thought process behind bringing a rogue list and how it adapts into a meta in which, to be fair, a lot of people thought was solved. With the exception of green purple at Bochum, I think most people felt the meta was very static. And for the most part, it has been, but we are seeing players like yourself be able to find some gaps in the traditional thinking and bring such a good list. On my end, I'm trying to get as many videos as I can. Keep an eye on the channel, and if you want any coaching for future set championships, join the Discord, set up a ticket. So thank you, Jordan, for coming on, and that has been all for today.
Thanks for having me.